Today's video is a very special video. It's for you, my friends, in the comment section who call yourself atheists. Because you guys have been showing up in droves, just angry at me because I use the word atheist to mean atheist. So today I'm making this video for you to teach you that the word atheist means atheist. Now, before you go to the comment section and tell me why I'm an idiot, I want all of you to watch this entire video all the way to the end before you go and tell me why I'm an idiot. And if you tell me I'm an idiot, tell me why. I already know I'm an idiot. I know that better than any of you are ever going to know it, so at least give me reasons. But before you do that, watch to the end. Don't show up in the comment section and be like, I watched the first 7 seconds and you're stupid. Okay, well maybe I become brilliant 9 seconds in. Keep watching. And then, yeah, we'll talk about it. To the slideshow! Specifically today we're going to talk about the way that you kids on the internet define the word atheism, and why I refuse to join you. But first, here are 3 reasons why anyone believes anything. So there's 3 basic reasons why anyone has a belief. The first is intellectual. We think there is sufficient evidence to support the idea and think it is reasonable or rational to believe it. Now, all of us want to think of ourselves that this is the only reason we have any beliefs of any kind, is this. But it's not true of most people. We also have number 2, emotional, it feels right. Or we reject an idea because we associate with emotional pain. Or we want this to be true. Or we hope that's true. Or we really hope that's not true. Whatever it is. Emotions play a part in the way that our brains work. And number 3, volitional or the will. We want an idea to be true or false. And you've known people like this, even if you don't acknowledge that it's ever been you. It probably has. But we've all known that person who whatever, this is what I want to be true. And the facts don't matter. It happens. There's that part of your brain that's just stubborn and childish. And it's in all of us. Try not to judge. But what we're talking about today is just that first reason, the intellectual position. Here we go. So the question is, what is atheism? Well, I put out a very helpful flowchart to help everybody. It's in my videos, but here it is again for all of you, my friends. Ta-da! Question number 1, do you believe that God does exist? There's only 2 possible answers, yes or no. If you say yes, that's theism. And then I say, okay, well, what do you mean by God? If you say no, I have a second question. It says, do you believe that God does not exist? And again, there's only 2 possible answers, yes or no. If you say, yes, I do believe God does not exist, that is atheism. If you say, no, I don't believe God doesn't exist, but I don't believe that he does, that's agnosticism. That's the maybe, the I don't know. Let's take a look at it through the lens of Mythbusters. These guys have taught us so much over the years. So, when it comes to any idea, okay, put the whole does God exist question aside for a second. When talking about anything at all, you have 3 positions. Confirmed, the assertion is true, meaning it is reasonable to believe it. There is data which supports it being so. There's plausible. The assertion might be true, meaning it's at least possible that it's true, but you don't have enough information to say whether it is or it's not. And busted, the assertion is demonstrably false. There is not reason to believe it. There's evidence against it being so. Confirmed, busted, or plausible. Mythbusters. Thanks, guys. Now, absolute certainty is not required for any of these, but merely the ability to assert that the position is more reasonable than its opposite. To say confirmed, you are not saying that you have 100% doubtless certainty. What you're saying is the assertion is certainly more likely to be true than the opposite. Or if you say it's busted, then you're saying that it is more reasonable to assert that it's busted than to assert that it's confirmed. That's it. So, we're not talking about a level of certainty, but we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, we're going to talk about this jar of jelly beans. Are there more than 1,000 jelly beans in this jar? You have 3 possible answers, and they are yes, there are more than 1,000 jelly beans in the jar, or no, there are not more than 1,000 jelly beans in this jar, or maybe, I don't know if there is or there's not more than 1,000 jelly beans in the jar. Now, let's just be honest for a second. Right now, as you're looking at this picture of a jar of jelly beans, you don't know how many are in that jar, okay? So your position right now has to be maybe. That's it. That's the only one of these options that you can reasonably have right now looking at that jar, is you have to say, I don't know, okay? Now, let's talk about a few more things. Do you feel it likely that there are more than 1,000 jelly beans in this jar? And how confident are you in that answer? Now, these 2 questions are completely different than the previous question. The previous question was about the jar. These questions are about you. These are not the same as the previous question and do not require the same answer. Now, like I said before, you can say, in fact, you have to say maybe, because I don't give you enough information here to know how many jelly beans are in that jar, how many could fit in it. You have to say, well, maybe there's 1,000, maybe there's more than, I don't know. You can't know. But you might feel it most likely certain that there's no way more than 1,000 jelly beans can fit in there. Or maybe the opposite. You might feel really certain that, well, I think there could be 2,000 jelly beans in there. But you can't know that. And so the question of the jar itself has a different answer than the question about how you feel or how confident you are. Those are separate questions that get separate answers. I hope you understand that. We're moving on. So, there are more than 1,000 jelly beans in this jar. There's your statement. The answers that you can give about the jar are, yes, that's true, maybe it's true, or no, that's not true. But answers like, I hope so, or I feel like there can't be, or I doubt it, those are not answers about the jar. Those are answers about yourself. To give it sort of a quick description of what I'm talking about, how it relates to our topic, if you ask somebody, are you a Christian? And they say yes, and you say, okay, so you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and he died for your sins, and they say, well, I hope so. I'd like to think that's true. You're not talking to a Christian. You're talking to somebody who's a churchian who was raised in church. But no real Christian says, well, I hope so, or I think so, or maybe. That's not somebody who is asserting that position of truth. And I reject that that person's an actual Christian. In the same way, if you ask somebody, are you married? And they say, well, I hope so. You'd say, okay, no, you're not married. You would like to be someday, perhaps, or you like the idea of marriage. But no married person says, I hope I'm married, or I'd like to think that I am. And like, similarly, do you have children? No one says, well, I'd like to think that I do. If you do, you know it. Anyway, moving on. Bringing it full circle back to the myth-busting technologies applied to the existence of God. The theist is the confirmed. The assertion is true, God does exist, meaning it is reasonable to believe it. There's data which supports it being so. The agnostic says the assertion might be true. It's at least possible that it's true, but they don't have enough information to say yes or no. The atheist says the assertion is demonstrably false, meaning that it is not reasonable to believe it. There's evidence against it being so. And again, absolute certainty is not a requirement here, but merely the ability to assert that the position is more reasonable than its opposite. But that's a whole discussion for another day. So, here is how I define the word atheist. Atheist is an individual person who chooses to affirm the statement, there is no God or gods as a true statement, and thus atheism is the belief or the assertion that there is no God or gods. That's how I've always used the term. That's whenever I define it, that's how I define it. Now, I know that's not how you define it. That's the point of this video, is to discuss the difference. Here's how the internet defines atheism. Atheism, according to the internet, is having no belief in the existence of God or lacking a belief in the existence of God. Why is there a picture of a shoe and a toaster here? Because the first complaint I have with this definition is if you say atheism is merely the absence of belief in the existence of God, then my shoe and my toaster are both atheists, or atheism is a description of any brainless inanimate object. And before you go leaving me angry comments in the comment section, I've had atheists say, yes, that's what it means. That's a proper usage. So you don't have me to argue with, you have each other. So don't do it in my comment section. Now let's break down this definition a little bit more. On atheism, you've got two different sort of definitions. So the internet atheist definition says it is a lack of belief in the existence of God. And traditionally, most of Western culture and most philosophers of religion and that kind of thing have said that it's the belief that no gods exist. This is what I have just defended. It is the position that says busted, God does not exist. And we tend to think of these as being equivalent. Here is our first dividing point, and here's the first complaint that I get from people in the comment section, because they say, no, these are not the same. And here is why. And in a sense, they are right. That the first answer, a lack of belief in the existence of God, is not actually asserting a fact. It doesn't say, well, this is the truth. It is saying, you have asked me, do you believe that God exists? And I've said, no. Having not asserted something, I don't have a burden of proof. And as far as the conversation goes at this point, that's true. The other side that says, no gods exist, God does not exist, is asserting that fact, and thus they do have a burden of proof. So, on this definition, these two are not the same. The new internet definition and the traditional definition I go with are not the same. One is a positive affirmation, the other is a lack of belief in a positive affirmation. So thus far, we have come to an agreement Not necessarily on which definition we should use, but at least on the fact that these two definitions are not the same definition. For those of you who are still confused, here's my metaphorical example. The flat Earth. Let's call it a globism. So, do you believe that the Earth is a globe, a sphere? You can say, I lack a belief that the Earth is a globe, or you can say, I believe that the Earth is a flat disk. If all you're saying is that you lack the belief that the Earth is a globe, you're not asserting a fact at that point. There's no burden of proof. But once you say the Earth is a flat disk, now you have asserted a position, you have a burden of proof. So I'm hoping that clears it up for anybody who is confused in the first place. Here is where I get to my real sticking point with the internet definition of atheism, is that it tries to stop the conversation by saying it is merely a lack in the belief in the existence of God. But here's the thing. If a person lacks a belief in the existence of God, there must be one of two possible reasons why they lack that belief. Now, even if you don't have the answer to why, if you tell me I lack a belief in the existence of God and I say why, and you say, well, I don't have a good answer. Okay, but I know you've been there. You've thought about it. Somewhere in your head is an answer that you could, maybe not in the comments section, but if we were having a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you would have something that you could say to that. My problem is that pretending that that's the entire conversation, that I lack a belief in the existence of God, full stop, pretending that you've never asked yourself this question is only pretending that you are beyond the allowed limit of lazy and stupid, and I do not accept it. Because if you have come to the point where you say, you know what, I don't know if God exists, you've asked yourself why. And here's the only possible answers to why. Either you are certain of God's absence, or you're not certain of God's absence. You say, I lack a belief in the existence of God. I say, why? Are you certain that God isn't there? You say yes. Or you say no. Those are the only two options. So here's the thing. We've come full circle. If you lack a belief in the existence of God, there's two reasons why you lack that belief. Either it's because you do assert that God does not exist and you are certain of his absence, or you believe you are, in which case you're an atheist. Or I say, are you certain that God is absent? And you say, no, I don't know that he's absent. I just don't believe that he's there. Well, that's agnosticism. So thus, the result of this internet definition saying that atheism is a lack of belief in the existence of God, the result is that you're saying that an atheist is an atheist because they are an atheist or because they are an agnostic, and this is why I reject this definition. Because you have taken the word that means busted and said, well, we're going to use it to mean busted or plausible busted. You're saying no, maybe, when I'm saying no, yes, no, and maybe are three separate answers. And you're saying, well, you can say yes, I'm saying no, maybe. That's not a legitimate answer, and this is why. And ultimately, starting with your internet definition of atheism, you come to the same conclusion I do, you just take a slightly different path. My chart said, do you believe that God does exist? Yes or no? And then, do you believe that God doesn't exist? Yes or no? This is the exact same conversation. You say, well, no, I don't believe that God does exist. I lack a belief in the existence of God. And I say, why? Are you certain that he's absent? Are you saying you believe he doesn't exist? And the answer is either yes or no. You're either an atheist or an agnostic. And again here, if you're an atheist, you have the burden of proof because you are asserting, whether to me or just to yourself, you are asserting that the universe is godless, that God does not exist. Whereas if you're just saying, well, I lack a belief in the existence of God, but I don't know that he's not there, I'm not certain that he's absent, that's agnosticism. You have no burden of proof because you don't have a position. But, and this is where you people in the comment section need to think about this, is that if that's your position and you're saying, well, I don't know that he's not there, I can't prove that, then you don't have a basis on which to criticize theism or to tell me that I'm stupid. You should be asking questions. You should be saying, okay, I don't believe what you do, but what about this? Why do you believe this? What about this that I think might show that you're wrong? You should be asking questions. If your position is, I don't know, you have nothing to teach me. Stop pretending to educate me and just ask good questions. I am here to help you. So starting with your definition of atheism as a lack of belief in the existence of God, we come to the same conclusion that I have, is that either you're an atheist or an agnostic. But note, I am distinguishing between those who believe they are intellectually reasonable to believe that God is absent, and those who merely maybe feel theism is wrong, or those who want theism to be wrong. That Richard Dawkins is a good example of this. Richard Dawkins used to be the poster boy for atheism, but having debated theists, having tried to defend atheism, he's realized that it cannot be done, and he now calls himself an agnostic. Now, he calls himself an agnostic who's fairly confident that God doesn't exist, but he's trying to assert agnosticism. But here's my problem with him, as he's like those people in the comment section who are like, well, I'm not asserting a position, I don't know, but you're stupid. I'm like, well, if you don't know, you don't know that. So Richard Dawkins is one of those people who tries to go, well, maybe, no. I'm like, okay, prove no. I'm just saying maybe. No, he's at maybe. But he wants to think no, and he wants to make fun of you for saying yes, but he doesn't have a reason for saying no, so his position is maybe. You see the problem? So again, this is not about how you feel or what you want. This is about your position. You lack a belief in the existence of God. Why? Because you're certain of God's absence? If the answer is yes, you're an atheist. If the answer is no, you're an agnostic. Ask good questions. And here is why this internet definition fails, is because, see that orange section up there? This internet definition tries to pretend that the conversation ends there. And even if it's not the conversation with somebody like me, the conversation you have with yourself. If you are content to say, I lack a belief in the existence of God, and then you turn your brain off, that's not the end of the conversation. You need to ask yourself good questions. You need to say, well, why is it I lack this belief in God when it seems that atheistic culture just doesn't exist? Every culture, every tribe, every nation has always been theists. And these Christians are awful confident of themselves. They seem to be able to answer questions on science and history and theology and philosophy, all showing that the biblical worldview is true and that their God does exist. If you're just going to say, well, I lack a belief in the existence of God, that's the end of the conversation. You're not being honest with yourself. And you're also being tremendously lazy. Okay, pretending that all of that isn't there is lazy and dishonest. And if you're not lying to me, you're at least lying to yourself. You got to be honest with you. Be true to yourselves, kids. And be willing to ask yourself those hard questions. Now, let me bring this back full circle to my channel and the videos that I make. When I talk about atheists, I define atheist as an individual person who chooses to affirm the statement that there is no God or gods as a true statement. Thus, I define atheism as the belief that there is no God or gods. Thus, when I talk about the religion of atheism, I am talking about the religion which results from the starting affirmation that God does not exist. I am not talking about agnostics. So if you're an agnostic but you call yourself an atheist, I'm not talking about you. So if you're an agnostic who gets mad at me for describing atheists as something that you are not, that's on you, because you're calling yourself something that you're not. And I'm talking about the thing that is. You're just mislabeling yourself. So don't get mad at me because I'm describing what you think is you, because it's not you. I'm talking about them, not you. You're an agnostic. That's a different video. When I'm talking about atheists, I'm talking about atheists. When I'm talking about atheism, I'm talking about atheism. So if you're an agnostic, I'm not talking about you when I'm talking about atheism. So chill out. We're cool, man. We're still buds here. While I'm on the subject, a straw man is not disagreeing about something. Okay, so before you make some stupid comment in the comment section telling me that I'm guilty of a straw man because I define atheist different than you do, number one, I've just explained why my definition works and yours doesn't. Number two, we can just disagree. But here's the thing, a straw man is intentionally misrepresenting somebody else's position. So if I say, well, atheism is the belief that God doesn't exist and that puppies need to be stomped into paste to reach enlightenment, you'd go, whoa, what's this puppy stomping thing? And I'm like, hey, atheists, they hate puppies. They're puppy stompers. That's a straw man, because I have taken their actual position and twisted, distorted, added to it, or taken away from it so that it's a different version that isn't real. But me saying, I'm defining atheist to mean this, that's not a straw man. So stop telling me it's a straw man. In fact, go look up the word straw man. You guys got to learn what those things mean. So having defined it properly, in conclusion, what burden of proof does atheism have? Can it be intellectually viable? And the answer is no, because atheism must prove that God, who is a necessary being who must exist, cannot exist. Atheists must argue against all known laws of logic, math, and science. They must reject certain knowledge, objective morality, and their own existence. Like I've said, that's a big burden of proof. Atheism is stupid. Atheism is dead. You, my friends, are not stupid enough to be an atheist. But if you're lazy enough to be an agnostic, stop being lazy and start asking good questions. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And here's 2 Bible verses to get you started. John 14:6, Jesus answered them, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And John 3:16 tells us, For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. That's the truth. And the truth will set you free. All right, you've watched the entire video. If you've got comments or questions, hopefully questions, leave them down below. Be nice, be good to each other, and remember, Jesus loves you.